Hi there, it is Jo from Minerva, and today we're going to do a tutorial on how to finish shaped hems. You don't often see this, but sometimes you might see a style choice which has a hem that's either high and low at the back, has very curved shirt hem style, quite accentuated curve on the hip, or you might have a completely shaped hem and have a hem with a scalloped edge. You won't be able to just turn those up and hem them like you normally do. You'll need to try and create that shape and hold that shape by using a facing. You can add a shaped hem to any pattern. So if you have a vest top and you want to make it a little bit more interesting, you can scallop the bottom or add an asymmetrical curve and make it a really individual piece. This is how we do it. So the example I'm using today is a scalloped edge, and you need to make a pattern piece. So you can do that a couple of different ways. I've used a squared paper. So I marked the centre of this thick line all the way along here, and then I found a round object and put it on top and used that to curve out my scallop. I'm mocking up a hem today, so if I put my pattern piece down, I can draw around this shape with a pencil, and then I can move it along and make my scallop longer if I want to. I'm just going to put my final one on this end with the 1 centimetre seam allowance. So now this end will join with this end and I'll have a continuous scallop. This is a thick cotton duck. Because we can't hem this and get right into those corners, then we need to make a facing. So I've made one in a different colour so that you can see it. So this is in a lighter fabric, but if it's very light, if you're working with like a cotton lawn or something, then you can interface your facing so that it really holds the shape. It depends what shape you've got. If you've got pointed shapes like spikes, or if you've got an irregular shape, then you might want to interface your facing so that it holds the shape. I'm not going to today because I'm not making a garment. This is just a sample. With right sides together, pin your shape in place. And you can use a 1/4 inch or a very small seam allowance now. So you don't need a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. That's for seams that you need to allow fitting for. So here you're going to use a small 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can use a 1/4 inch seam foot if you've got one, or it's 6mm, so you can get it really small. You're going to be sewing quite slowly, so if you can turn your machine speed down, that's always helpful. Back tack, and then slowly move your 1/4 inch foot around the shape of the curve. You can mark on your pivot point so that you get very even scallops. It often surprises me how far away from the seam line the pivot point is. So if you make sure you've got that, then you don't flatten out your curves. So I've used a seam gauge and my air erasable pen. So now as I'm heading up this second scallop, I've got a point that I'm aiming for. So you will be getting this even stitch line, but we can't turn this out now because we will get creases and puckers here where we want the fabric to be released. So we need to do a little bit of fabric handling skill. So you'll need a sharp pair of scissors, and you can do it with your dressmaking scissors. It's just that you run the risk of cutting through the seam line. So we're going to use the small scissors, and the first thing to do is to snip up to that pivot point that we marked. And the closer you can get, the better it will turn out. But obviously you don't want to go through the stitch line. Sometimes just one more thread in the weave can make all the difference. So that's now released the scallops. And now we can trim the seam or clip it, depending what sort of fabric you've got. If you've got one that's going to fray, don't trim it down anymore. If you've got something more stable, you can trim it down a bit more. But you're going to clip around each curved edge. You can take some out of here if you need to, so that you get less bulk in that corner there, where when you turn it out, you don't want lots of fabric all trying to squeeze into the same space. If this was the top that you were making, then you want to be finishing that edge now, so you overlock it, or if it's the hem of a skirt, you could press it down, because we're going to do a deep hemline top stitch or catch stitch by hand to join that down, because you can't just leave that flapping on the inside. So finish that edge, and then you can turn out your scallops. I've got a Hera tool. It's actually for folding and pressing in quilting, but it's really good because it's got a curved edge. It's really good for pressing out the curves. So you can see you're not getting a curved shape, but if I can use the tool to get a more curved line. It's going to depend on how accurately you sewed on the machine. So spend a little bit of time just working your fabric. When you've turned out your scallops, it's then time to go and press. Obviously I've got a different colour on the facing, so you might just see like the edge of mine rolling round, but you'll need to be trying to roll the fabric for the front to the front and the facing to the back. So it's all pressed out on the reverse. I've folded the edge over and pinned it. So from the right side, you get really nice scallops. They're all even. That's the shape I chose, so they're a little bit pointy. So you might get ones that are more smoothed out, but I just made that pattern myself. And then ordinarily you would have your skirt or sleeve made, and then you would add the facing. So if I join that now with a 1 centimetre seam allowance, I would have quite a bit of seam bulk on the back. So if you do add a scallop, you normally make the construction of your garment and then put the facing on. You don't often do it at the same time because your seam would be on the outside. So that is how you make a shaped hem. Adding a facing to a hem can work in a different way. So if you wanted to turn up some trousers, for example, on you, or you've made something and you need to let them down, and you haven't got very much seam allowance left, then you can put a facing on the inside of a trouser hem by just turning up a very, very small amount of fabric, and then you can add a facing on the inside, and that's a good way to get a little bit more length if you didn't leave enough length to make the hem length that you would like. You also see shaped hems on shirts. For example, on the Cali shirt dress, it's got a very deep high-low hem with a really strong curve on it. So you can't just turn this hem up, it's got a facing on the inside, and that becomes part of the top stitching detail. So you might be asked to face a hem if you've got a deep curve at the sides. I'm going to have a go at using it on my Grey 9 Studio Scout tee because it's a really basic top. But I'm going to have a go at scalloping the bottom of the hem. I hope that's given you a little bit of pause for thought and a little hack that you might try on lots of different patterns. You can also try the same technique on a sleeve hem. So if you want a scalloped sleeve hem, you will need to put a facing on the inside and do all of that fabric handling and clipping so that you get a really flush finish. If you've made a garment with a shaped hem, we would love to see it. In fact, if you've made anything, we would love to see it. So do take a picture of yourself. It doesn't have to be professional, just be yourself. We'd love to see what you have made. Do check out our other tutorials. There are lots of learn to sew ones, learn to fit ones, sew along ones, and fabric pairings, and a little focus on different types of fabric. Thank you very much for watching. See you again soon.